Hey, I'm Christina Quinn. Welcome back to Try This from the Washington Post. This is the second of 4 classes in our course about how to enjoy cooking more. In our first class, we tapped into who we are outside of the kitchen to figure out who we are in the kitchen, also known as our kitchen personality. In this second class, we're going to sharpen our focus a bit more on taking what you like to do and turning it into a repertoire of meals, or a number of dishes you can make reliably. But before you build a repertoire, you need to identify your starting point. The Washington Post's food and dining editor, Joe Yonan, suggests embracing the search.
I think you can make the hunt for those repertoire dishes part of the fun. Like you can, whoever you're cooking with or for, like it can be, okay, I'm trying out some things, let's see if anything sticks. Or it can be based on something that you had when you were a kid, or something that you had at a friend's house, or something that you read about. But just the process of, what is it going to be? What is it going to be that I end up wanting to make all the time can be part of the fun.
If you're just starting to flex your kitchen muscle and looking for inspiration, Joe says to look for a food writer or cook who resonates with you.
Look out for those food people that you can relate to, that you think either represent, a similar outlook, or you like their voice, or something about them.
There is something exciting about finding a cookbook or recipe blogger who you feel you've been waiting to find your entire life. I remember when I stumbled upon a food blog called Pickled Plum. The cook, Caroline, has a Japanese background similar to mine, and I felt like I had found a kitchen kindred spirit. So take the time to find that person you're jazzed about. It's totally worth it.
Or I think you go really in another direction and you maybe look for a book by someone that you don't know, some cuisine that you don't know, but you start paging through it and it looks accessible or it looks exciting to you in some way.
Wherever you look for inspiration, choose a standalone entree, a main dish that you want to eat, and commit to making it. It's one step in building a handful of dishes you can cook reliably and keep in your repertoire. And your meal choices don't have to fit a certain mold. Different cooks have different approaches to what your recurring collection of meals should look like.
I think there's 2 different repertoires. There's one of things where it's like, I need to eat so I do not go hungry. And for that, for me, it's things like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, some scrambled eggs, a hot dog from out of the freezer. And yes, I'm a food writer. And yes, these are things that I eat for meals. And then there's like actual meals where it can be things like sheet pan chicken and vegetables, or a simple like pasta and tomato sauce.
That's the Washington Post's food writer Erin Hutcherson, who we heard in the first episode. While it's comforting to know that a peanut butter and jelly sandwich qualifies as a repertoire meal, Erin knows we can do better.
I think everyone should have, let's say, 5 dishes that they know in and out and can also riff on if they want to, that they can make for themselves, that they'd be okay feeding to others. They don't have to be the fanciest thing, but it's more than a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
So here's the next step in building out your repertoire. Zero in on any dishes you already know how to make with the goal of getting even better at making them and knowing when to take them to the next level.
I do think that it can really help to break out of this idea that you do need to be trying something new all the time. We act like we're supposed to be running a little restaurant at home, and it's not sustainable, and it's also very demoralizing usually.
Joe makes the case for returning to the same dish on a regular basis, because that's part of the beauty of having a repertoire. It allows you to get food on the table, makes you feel confident, and ultimately provides you with a template.
My mother had a small repertoire of things that she made, and, we loved them. And it becomes ritualized too. You're like, oh, it's pizza night on Friday, and it's Taco Tuesday. And I mean, you can still vary things. What goes in the tacos, what's on the pasta, what's on the pizza.
The more you do something, the easier it becomes.
I think the key is just to have enough things under your belt so that 5:30 panic doesn't set in. You know, when it's 5:30, you haven't thought of anything, you don't really know what's around, and your kids start saying, or your spouse, or both, start saying, "What's for dinner?" And it just makes you want to jump out the window. But if you've already got an idea of things that you are comfortable making and that you know how to shop for them, you know how to make them, you've got that in your back pocket, and then you don't feel like you're starting from scratch every day.
Ultimately, that's Joe's point. Make the same thing a whole bunch of times, and you've now got yourself a solid go-to template.
When you cook the same thing over and over again, you get better and better at it. And you get more comfortable with it. And you've got it so ingrained in your head that the distractions start to matter less.
So, okay, if at this point you're worried that you're going to get tired of eating the same thing, fear not. That's when you level up. I'll explain how after the break. When Washington Post recipe developer Becky Crystal first started teaching herself to cook after graduating from college, she knew she needed at least one recipe she could serve to friends she had over for dinner. Something simple but elegant and tasty. She immediately thought of her mom's chicken with mushrooms.
So you'd brown chicken in a skillet. After you've breaded it, cover it with wine, add some canned mushrooms and bake it so it was braised. And I added this to my repertoire fairly early on. I basically made it every time I had people come over, and everyone liked it.
For years, Becky faithfully followed her mom's version of the recipe. But over time, she started making little tweaks.
Which meant doing things like moving the whole process to a Dutch oven, which I had bought, which simplifies it, makes it a one-pan meal. It goes from stovetop to oven. I tried to streamline the breading process, so instead of like a 3-step process, it turned into 2 with just mustard and breadcrumbs. I used chicken thighs, which were my preferred cut as opposed to the original breasts. And I used fresh mushrooms instead of the canned, which there's nothing wrong with canned, but I'm a mushroom girl and I like them fresh.
Becky eventually made the dish her own. So that's your next step. Make a dish your own. Pick one dish in your repertoire that you're already solidly familiar with and branch out. Make 1 or 2 little tweaks to the recipe. Maybe it's a matter of swapping out the vegetables, using a different cut of meat, or realizing it needs a little extra salt or even a longer cooking time. You will learn as you practice.
Give yourself a time period where you are getting more familiar with the skills, follow recipes, and then you can take it to the next level by riffing on them yourself.
And sometimes, even with a solid repertoire, you're probably going to want to try something new. The Washington Post has a massive archive of recipes going back decades, including Becky's chicken and mushrooms dish. So it's a great place to browse for inspiration when you want to add something new to your lineup. But you can find inspiration anywhere. Okay, quick recap. Repetition is the foundation of a repertoire. But first, identify your starting point. Find inspiration through a person or cuisine that excites you. Then, choose a dish you're going to make and commit to it. And do it again. It's okay to make the same things every week. It can be a ritual. And if you want to zhuzh things up a bit, swap out some of the ingredients, whether it's with a different protein or a new spice. Don't feel pressured to make something new. Just focus on your template and make what you know better and better. Getting in a groove boosts your kitchen confidence, helps you learn, and makes it easier to cook while distracted. Not too distracted, though. Let's not forget our oven mitts. Okay, that's it for our second class. Up next, in our third class on how to enjoy cooking more, we look at the science that flips the idea that cooking is merely an everyday chore to get food in our bellies. It turns out there's more to it. If you're looking for more advice and inspiration, Becky, Aaron, and the whole food team share some fantastic recipes that are easy to follow on the Washington Post website. Joe is also coming out with a new book in September called Mastering the Art of Plant-Based Cooking. and it just might turn me vegan. We'll publish new classes in this cooking course each week on Thursdays. If you're a Washington Post subscriber, though, you can access the full course right now in Apple Podcasts. To do that, connect your Post subscription by looking up the Washington Post channel in Apple Podcasts. If you're not a subscriber, right now through July 10th, you can sign up for only 50 cents a week for your first year. You can subscribe through the link in our show notes or at washingtonpost.com/subscribe. Again, that's washingtonpost.com/subscribe. All right, meet me in class 3.